We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So it begins.
You know how much I sacrifice?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are Sex People! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft Services.
Hey, Trent. Oh, the weather outside is frightful.
But the podcasting is so delightful.
And since we've no place to go, let us record. Trent, what have you been eating most recently?
That was awesome, dude. It's like you just alluded to. It's the big storm.
The big storm.
I am leaving on a work trip in a few days, so we have to record this intro a bit in advance, and I'm really excited to drive in 2 days right after the big storm.
That sounds awesome.
No, it sounds awesome. We have to drive like really far, a bunch of people, a bunch of like souls. I believe I have to drive like 15 souls like deep into the mountains of a different state.
Oh, great.
So like, given we just had this like huge storm, like that shouldn't cause any additional stress level at all.
No.
So that's cool, but I just had some grilled cheese and tomato soup, which on a day like this is
That's
delightful.
a very cozy
Is
meal.
delightful. Trying to be as cozy as possible before I enter a stressful situation. What about you, Parth?
Well, Trent, yesterday I went grocery shopping because we really needed to go grocery shopping anyways, but we were going to be snowed in today and, very likely for much of tomorrow. And so we knew we needed to get some supplies. And let me tell you, Trent, it wasn't a madhouse in that there weren't that many more people, but there was almost nothing, like in many of the aisles. Like so much of the inventory was gone. And I went to ShopRite and to Trader Joe's, and last night I felt a want for some roasted broccoli and for rigatoni alla vodka. And so we made that last night, which was very tasty, and then we heated it up again for lunch today. And then we're recording as of right now at 5:47 p.m. And so you know it. I had my afternoon chai. That's what's been going on at the Marathe household.
I had an interesting experience in that I went grocery shopping today once there was already like a foot of snow. And,
how did that go?
Getting to and fro was interesting, but also kind of nice to walk in the snow. But the grocery store itself was well stocked, and because it was in the middle of an active storm, pretty tame.
Nobody there. Yeah.
So it's almost like instead of going before, you should just wait until the shit has started to hit the fan and then just go to the grocery store.
The problem is that you live in Brooklyn in a walkable environment and I live in Highland Park. And while there is a grocery store that's like a 15, 20-minute walk away from me, it's not walkable in the same way yours is walkable.
Yeah, I saw something that said that this is the Super Bowl for DoorDashers. It's got to be.
Yeah, it's also sort of like, what's a better analogy? Because it's like you're putting your life on the line in like a real way. And like football players will say they're putting their life on the line, but it's like they're making it so that football field is okay, No one's really keeping track of the roads right now.
But if you're in suburbia and you like DoorDash, like Chipotle, like there's a soul who's like actually putting their whole life at stake for like $20 right now.
I think you're kind of evil if you do that. I think you're like a little bit evil.
I think an overwhelming amount of people do that sort of thing without thinking about it.
That's the same thing as like people that don't grocery shop in time for Thanksgiving and then pull up to the grocery store on Thanksgiving and then tell the like retail worker, like the cashier, so messed up that they're making you work today. Sorry. It's like you could prevent this whole interaction from happening by not doing this. And I feel like people with DoorDash, it's sort of like, we've known for a while now that a snowstorm was happening. You should have just had stuff ready,
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever articulated this on the pod, definitely in life a few times, but if I was ever approached to do my Subway hot take is that Uber and DoorDash are exclusively like once or twice a year, like emergency things.
Agreed.
And it's kind of embarrassing otherwise, especially in New York where like a subway
everything is walkable
or bus or your legs can get you anywhere. It's unless you're like absolutely obliterated drunk or someone else is paying for it, it's embarrassing to do these things.
We have said this on the pod a few times, I think, but I firmly believe that delivery is only acceptable in like a few situations. One in which you are too drunk to drive, and you're at a party, and so like everybody's too inebriated to do anything. Or if you're hosting a party and you need something, but like you can't really leave, or that's sort of a more specific situation. But like, I don't know, you're getting pizza delivered or something. Like, sure, that's something.
Because if alcohol isn't the prohibitive thing, which I totally understand, and like you shouldn't drunk drive, you'd just be like, oh, I'm going to leave the party for 20 minutes, go pick up the pizza, drive back. It'll be a nice breath of fresh air. And then I save like 20% because I don't have all these additional costs.
Well, that's the thing, is that I remember, I mean, not to put him on blast, our mutual friend Jackson Clark, we walked through New Brunswick, New Jersey, and passed a Popeyes, and I went, it's kind of getting close to dinner time. Jackson, do you want something from Popeyes? And he said, no. We walked to, I think it was your guys' apartment. I think you were living together at this point. And he went, I'm hungry. I'm going to DoorDash Popeyes. And I said, that's ridiculous. And I was like, we should just walk there. And he was like, but we just walked from there. And I'm like, but it's really not that far away. And long story short, I walked over, and for the price he was willing to pay to DoorDash one sandwich, I got 2 sandwiches.
Yeah, that really says everything.
But here's the thing about craft services, is that for the price of one interview, you get not 1, but 2 episodes. But to get to that second part of that interview, we need to cue the intro.
Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on the picture. This week is part 2 of production designer Fiona Crombie.
And is she just a production designer, or was she nominated for anything recently? Like, is she up for any awards?
Do you know the Oscars?
Like the Grouch?
No, the award ceremony.
I guess I do, yeah.
Okay, so Fiona Crombie was nominated for Best Production Design, which is fitting because she did the production design for Hamnet.
Maybe the best production design of the year.
Yeah, no, among, I believe, the top 5. We're rooting for it. We interviewed her a few weeks before those nominations came out, and now we're super excited for her. So congratulations.
Yeah, she was a really good time on the pod. Thanks so much to her team for making it all work out. I'm really happy we got to cover Hamnet, as is Trent's mom, who is, as I said last week, 30% of the reason we covered the movie at all. But yeah, the second half of the interview I think is really cool. She gives some more info, talks about the last movie she watched. Pretty interesting. And Trent, should we cue it? Should we do it and cue it?
Yeah, Parth, do it and cue it. Either just yourself or in conjunction with Chloe Zhao, can you talk about sort of what your goals were for the production design for this movie, or what you were going for?
Well, like I said earlier, like I had a really strong sense of the film that I wanted to make, for sure. Like, you know, that I wanted to offer up. And so I did this like massive spread of images and sent them to Chloe. And she later said, like recently said, it was in those initial impulses that she knew that I was the right designer, in the same way that she knew that Malgosia was the right costume designer and Nicole Stafford was the right hair and makeup, like, and Lukash as well, because we all put together images separately without ever having met each other. And she could identify that we were wanting naturally, our own impulses were to tell the story that she wanted to be told. And so she really felt like she could just leave. I mean, she didn't leave us because she was very involved, but she would allow us to kind of follow those instincts and impulses. And for me, I was very drawn to this idea of this kind of like this, the domestic landscape, actually. Like, it's an Elizabethan family, but there's such an intimacy and something that I hadn't done or really seen, where you're in a really period movie, but it has like a heartbeat, you know, like it's the opposite of what I did on The Favourite. You know, on The Favourite, it was about admiring from a wide, admiring at a distance and kind of being in awe of the surroundings. This is the opposite. I want to bring everyone closer and for people to be drawn into this family and to invest in this family and to just be like, oh, they're like you and me, like they're worrying about this, or they're just like, they're peeling the apples, or they've got to put the rubbish out, the same stuff. Like there's things that in my house, the mess that's by the front door, or, the same stuff. I just wanted it to feel so that you could connect directly to these characters rather than it to feel remotely like a museum piece. And so my first batch of images were things like laundry hanging or incidental things, something on the windowsill, just like basically life. I wanted there to be life in this film because I think obviously when the house is interesting because it transitions. It has all these different feelings and emotions and it goes through these phases. And so you feel it being very alive and then you feel it being very empty. And so all of that only means something because you've seen, so when it's empty, it only means something because it's been full, and it's the kind of thing of hearing kids' footsteps on the stairs. When they go quiet, you are aware they've gone quiet. And so all of that was kind of what I wanted to put into this film.
Can you talk about, because you're mentioning the OG Shakespeare house, and then there's the house that they moved to, the bigger one. Can you talk about that house, and then also like creating the surrounding town and how that all sort of came together?
Yeah, so the house that they moved to, we used to call the new house. And I mean, that was just an amazing location that we found that was at this incredible point. We were so lucky because they were renovating. The people that own it were doing this massive renovation. And it meant their gardens were just completely out of control. And the back garden was nothing. It was covered in just, I don't know, like bricks or something and grass, like just a mess. And so they let us create our garden there. So we brought in, it was 3,000 plants came in like 5 days to plant that garden. But out the front was, when you're the sort of establisher, it's just all wild because basically they had been leaving their house. In fact, when we saw it, it was covered in scaffold. So there was this massive like negotiation to get the scaffold down for us to shoot. But it's an incredible house. I mean, we didn't have to shoot inside, which is kind of good because it was full of like tarpaulins and, but Henry VIII stayed there. I've got a video on my phone of like this tiny little wood paneled room where he used to stay when he used to travel. So it's really amazing house. Yeah. And then the town was a town called Webley, and it had a couple of these corners where you had a percentage of accurate architecture. And so we sort of fell in love with that particular corner that we used. And I think the thing that is great about this film that I'm really proud of is just the economy of it. You don't need more. You don't need these massive, you're with the characters. So you're not in these massive wides all the time. You have your sense of where you are, and then you're back with the people. So we built one side of it because one side was completely, I don't know, there was like a hairdresser's and a petrol pump from memory. And so we built one side, obviously did the, covered in, all the right kind of textures. And then the front of our house is amazing because it's an old Tudor house. And so it's like the beams are completely uneven, but we built the front of it and fit it in the existing front. So there was an overhang and we built a piece, and because it was actually a cafe. So it had a big glass window, just like a cafe, and we hid it so beautifully. And so, yeah, it was just a really good find. And there's like a little bit of set extension there, a little bit of VFX tidy up, but really that's the corner.
There are some scenes that take place sort of in like the open woods, and it's really beautiful. I was wondering like what combination of like searching and designing are like primarily exterior scenes like that.
Well, it was really about searching and then responding. So we went out that first time that we met. The first thing we did was go looking for the forest, and particularly looking for where Agnes would give birth. What felt like a place that somebody would give birth because, and return to through the course of your life. Like if you found a place that felt safe to you, what would that be? And it was kind of like this sort of getting to know you exercise where we're walking around the woods and saying, you know, I'd go here and I find this, you know, I'd be drawn to this. And we're all sort of discovering it. And I remember it absolutely pouring with rain and Chloe having absolutely no wet weather gear. She'd come in straight from LA. And then I don't think we found it on that. I remember we loved the forest on that first trip, but it was on the second, I think, that we found the tree with the hole. And that became a real point of like a focus, you know. And so what we did from the art department point of view is we built all the vines and, you know, the root system around it to kind of create this nest. And then we dressed the floor, the forest floor. So we put in all the ferns and the plants so that it's actually kind of more open. There's not as much greenery. And so we built that up so there was something for them to run through and interact with. But really it was because we found the hole, and the hole, you know, became an anchor point for that scene, but then obviously carried through the whole film. And that was through that moment of coming across something. That's what I love about the process, is we came across something, we all felt it was meaningful. And then through the process, it grew and became more and more resonant. And, you know, it's now, and then it was on the stage of the Globe, you know, that was never there.
Oh, so the whole was completely just like a found element?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
And then it became more and more meaningful, you know, and we were like, oh, we understand what this is now, you know, particularly because there was always the liminal space, but, you know, where Hamnet is before he, you know, walks through the hole. But what that was in the book is actually a snowscape. And then we were saying, yes, but in our world, what would that be? And it was a bit of back and forth, and it felt like it needed to be related to the forest. It felt like it needed to have something earthy, but we couldn't. And then it became, no, he needs to be in the theater. And then, you know, so the whole thing was this sort of conversation. And I think that's what's so interesting about working with Chloe, and is that she is so intuitive. Like, she sits with things and lets them ruminate, and through conversation with, you know, actors and everybody, she arrives at the right thing. It's not a directive from day one. It's like a process together.
There's also some scenes with Will in London, like when he's away from the family and like he sees the puppet show, and it's a very sort of scary location. Can you talk about where that was and sort of building that space that's separate from the family life?
Yeah, I think so. That was a place called Charterhouse. That was a location. And again, we used such a tiny part of it, but it so articulates London in a really interesting way, I think, because I remember thinking, and there may have been a line in the script at one point about, you know, we see London from afar, like this, you know, there's the sprawling London. And I was just like, oh, okay. And then through the course of the process, you realize, well, you don't need to see sprawling London, because actually the thing that defines London for us is the fact that it's walls. You know, there is no, it's built up and it's brick. It's a different texture. We haven't seen that before. But crucially, it's high walls. So she, and I, you know, I'm talking about her because when I was thinking about it and we were coming up with it, the thing that really drove me about the London part of it was I kept thinking about what it felt for her, for Agnes, to, you know, it needed to feel foreign. It needed to feel like a place she would never choose to come here. And it's completely at odds with her life that she's chosen. And so we looked for a location that offered that. And actually, like, it was, like I said, a really small part, like in terms of like the actual footprint, but it told you exactly what you needed to know about the difference between London and Stratford.
Can you talk about building the Globe Theatre on a stage?
Well, it was in the back lot, so it was open outside. And so, you know, we were really looking up to the sky. We were really getting rained on. We were really getting flooded. And yeah, I mean, we always knew we were going to build it. We did go look at the real Globe together, and we all felt that it was sort of too big, too ornate. So ours is 70% of the scale. And really, it's my version. Like, it's an invention. Like, it's kind of a bit of an unknown because it's the first Globe, and the first Globe burnt down pretty quickly. Like, I think it was about 14 years after it was built. And so the second Globe is the one that's been recreated. So I felt like I had infinite leeway in terms of the kind of Globe that I wanted to make, which had to have a relationship to the architecture that we've seen, and it had to have a relationship also with the forest. And I felt very much that it had to speak to Will at the beginning of his career, you know, not that he's necessarily at the beginning of his career as a playwright, but this is his theatre that he's set up. And so I wanted it to be a place that felt pretty raw. And really, it's like about what's happening on the stage. But for me, as I'm crazy about old wood, like we found this most beautiful oak beams from France that we shipped over, and we spread those through all the sets that we built on the backlot. But it really dictated, I don't know, the kind of tone of that space was using these beautiful reclaimed timbers, which that's the only accurate thing that I like really was like, no, they use reclaimed timbers, because we actually heard that he stole the timbers from another dismantled building. And so I thought, that's cool. Like, let's do that.
Do you have a favorite set or a set that you're most proud of?
Do you know what? The one that I do love the Globe, but the one that I am wildly in love with is the house, the Henley Street house, because I don't know, we did it really quickly. It was like we had 9 weeks to build it, and that was interior, exterior. It had some street outside. Like it was a big, and we also built Will's apartment and the A-frame attic, all of that stuff. But really, like, while we were building the Globe. But there was something about that house that had, I don't even know why or how, it had real feeling in there. Like it felt very, very special. And maybe it's because people just like laid it out, like you think about what the actors went through and what they were prepared to do in that house. There was something very sacred about that set. And I don't ever have a relationship. I always love my sets. And then we start shooting in them and I'm like, see you later. I'm moving on, but that set, that house, I could revisit again and again. There was something about it. And, it had that lovely little garden in the back, and that garden went from, it was like summer and then autumn and winter. And I don't know, it really genuinely has my heart, that house. Yeah.
A question we like to ask, is there any sort of lesson you learned on this film that you feel like you'll carry with you on your next film, either like creatively or spiritually or whatever?
I think that this film, like Chloe has referred to it as being made by a village. And I think that is absolutely true. And there was really genuinely no sense of hierarchy, or that nobody was not, it wasn't that anybody wasn't invited to bring their best. Everybody was just, I don't know, there was something about the environment and the way that, there would be people cooking like on the back of the trucks, and there were dogs everywhere. And there was a real sense of we are all making something together. And I love making movies and I've had very happy experiences, but I hadn't quite had that where I felt like, every single person there knew each other's name and, just had a real sense of community. And so that there was that. And then I think the other really big thing was, I think Chloe showed what can happen when you keep your eyes open, and also you're open to what's on offer, whether it's for another person or it's through just walking around looking and seeing and feeling and responding. She really taught me that lesson.
Great. As we sort of start to wrap up, are you working on anything new that you're at liberty to talk about?
I am working, but I'm so jinxy. And then I just was so worried about NDAs because I don't actually fully read them. But they get signed, and then I just think, oh my gosh. And then somebody did say to me, you should have contacted a lawyer about this one because it's so intense. So I won't talk about it other than to say it's cool. It's good.
Whoa. William Shakespeare will return in Avengers Doomsday. Trent, you want to ask the Big Kahuna?
Yeah, this is our Big Kahuna final question, and it's, what is the last great movie you watched? And it can be a first-time watch or a rewatch, but it just it can't be just good, it has to be great.
Okay. I did, and this is really embarrassing to admit, just watch Phantom Thread. And I had sort of said that I had watched it a few times before. Because, those conversations where people say, oh, that moment in Phantom Thread, you go, oh, yeah. Anyway, then I watched it and I was like, wow, that was a great movie. Yeah.
And like working in costuming, I could see a lot of people in that world referencing that, or that being important text
people,
or whatever.
Just people in general. Like, it's one of those movies that people reference all the time and you have to go, oh, yeah. Yeah. But now I'm like, oh, well, in Phantom Thread.
Yeah, now you're
one of those people.
Yeah, you've crossed the threshold.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you so much to Fiona Crombie. She's the production designer behind such films like The Favorite, Beau is Afraid, Mickey 17, and our film for today, Chloe Zhao's Hamnet. Thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
What an interview, Trent.
Parth, that was fun.
That was
Enjoyed
a good
that.
fucking time.
Enjoyed Hamnet. I enjoyed the production design. I
Mhm.
just enjoyed Fiona Crombie. So it all came together on this one.
It did all come together. And hopefully she's going to have the track record that we had with Lol Crawley, who came on the show, was nominated, and then won.
Oh, like the DP from The Brutalist, Lol Crawley,
Yes.
who, here's the order of the events. DP'd or worked on a movie. Came on Craft Services podcast. Nominated for Oscar, a major award. Wins Oscar. End of story.
I'm just saying. I mean, people might say correlation or causation, but I'm just saying I think Craft Services is what cinched it, good as his work on The Brutalist was. No, obviously, Fiona Crombie, great job on the movie, and we really look forward to her picking up some gold.
And seeing their future work and watching their past work, because they've worked on a bunch of cool stuff, and I'm sure they'll work on a bunch of more cool stuff, and we'll have you back when that happens.
Exactly. And next week, we're a little on the production side, unsure of what's coming out next week. It might be a re-release to promote sort of another movie for which we interviewed somebody that was nominated. It's possible that happens, but it's also possible that we get an interview out. We're just trying to see what makes sense. It's snowy outside, okay, guys? I successfully tricked Trent into thinking I had a different apartment background by setting a snowy window as my background on Zoom.
And then I said, Parth, there's something weird is happening on your microphone.
Why does it look like it's a green screen?
Because it was like a realistic photo. I was like, oh, maybe your bedroom looks a little different. It wasn't like extravagant or anything. It was just like a normal person's bedroom. And I was like, maybe he's in a different room. But also, I know you're not on the ground level, but it showed just in a large snow buildup. And you were trying, which is true to reality. So you could really just go to your real window and it would kind of look like that anyway.
Yeah, although I guess you've not really been at my place enough to know like the ins and outs of what it looks like out my window. But it really does not look anything like that. But I was happy to have pranked Trent ever so slightly.
Well, because you're on the second floor, so it's not like the snow is 10 feet tall and up there.
Really looking forward to cleaning off my car. Cannot wait.
Yeah, but Parth does often open the calls with some sort of silly Zoom background, but it's usually silly and obvious and like a person we know or a reference to a movie we like.
A former professor.
Sure. But this time it was a more subtle approach.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying all the angles, seeing what's what.
Parth, you really can see all the angles.
Trent, we would never, while I love pranking you, we'd never prank our listeners because we're never going to prank them being like, surprise, no episode, except for that time that we did that last December.
Yeah, for an extended period of time. They shouldn't be surprised on Sundays at 5 a.m.
No,
when
should an episode come out.
When something happens. Something's going to happen. And what's going to happen is an episode is going to come out. Probably. Most likely every Sunday at 5 a.m. On Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Pandora, wherever you get your podcasts. Then you're going to head over to Instagram, Twitter. It's a snow day. You have time to doom scroll. My whole Instagram feed is like anti-ice stuff and like crazy like thirst traps. And I think just for both of those reasons, I need to step away.
Okay. Well, this took a turn. Thank you so much to our producer, Loyo Velazquez, for working on the show. Couldn't do it without you.
Wait, new producer Bash? Welcome aboard, man. Excited to have you as part of the family. You're like if Parth and I had a baby who became the producer of the podcast. It's
exactly like that.
So, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks to you, listener. Tell a friend, rate us, review us, 5 stars, 4 stars is fine too.
And really, that's it.
That's it.
We'll see you next week, guys. Stay safe.
Order DoorDash.
Or don't, actually.
Make someone else risk it all.
But if you give a good tip,
I delivered someone a pregnancy test via DoorDash the
What?
other day, and they tipped me $0.
Are you kidding me?
It's like, does your future mean that little to you?
Why would you?
And it was a dollar store pregnancy test, which doesn't seem particularly reliable.